Now I'm going to talk about the archaic era. During the archaic period, Greek art became less rigidly stylized and more naturalistic. Paintings on vases evolved from geometry designs to representations of human figures, often illustrating epic tales. In sculpture, faces were animated with a characteristic archaic smile, and bodies were rendered with a robing attention to human proportion and autonomy. Throughout the archaic period, people began to change or adapt their tools and lifestyles to better match the environment. Archaic era is usually referred to a time in every culture in which they start living their nomadic ways and begin to being sedentary. This is attributed to the end of the Ice Age and by that the disappearance of big animals such as the mammoth. The archaic period is an interesting time of improving environmental conditions resulting in a rich environment for humans to live in.
We don't know for sure, but scientists believe it's likely that the Paleo-Indians hunted mastodons because they could provide large amounts of fresh meat, as well as fur for clothing and bones that could be turned into tools. Over time, the climate got warmer, and the glaciers kept melting. If our winters today seem cold, you should have seen what they were like 10,000 years ago. 10,000 years ago is hard to imagine. Let's pretend that every inch on this scale represents 1,000 years. If you and I are living at this end, representing today, and the other end of the scale represents 12,000 years ago, around the time when glaciers had just disappeared, it's still hard to picture how long that is, isn't it? When mankind came to what is now the region of the Great Lakes, it was perhaps as long as 13,000 years ago. Near the end of what we call the last ice age, glaciers a mile high were receding to the far north. As they moved, those glaciers crushed giant rocks into gravel and sand and carved out enormous holes that filled with melting water from the glaciers. Those glaciers made Lake Huron and the rest of the Great Lakes. But as the glaciers melted, plants and birds and animals moved in. So did humans. Those groups of humans are known collectively by several different names: Indians, Aboriginal peoples, and Native peoples. Traditional Indian stories tell of a creator of all things who placed the native peoples on their homelands. There are many scientific theories on how native people first arrived in North America. Many scientists think the native peoples came to North America by walking from Asia. Today, there is deep water separating Russia and Alaska. On a map, you'll see it's called the Bering Strait. But more than 13,000 years ago, evidence indicates that there may have been a land bridge there, connecting the two continents. According to native peoples and their oral history, they have been here since time immemorial. These first groups of people in North America are often called Paleo-Indians, which means Indians from the old time. We don't know much about them. We don't know what kinds of clothes they wore, what their houses looked like, how their families worked, or their religious or spiritual traditions. Mostly, we have to make scientific guesses about those things. But we are certain of one thing: they had to be very strong people to survive the difficult times after the Ice Age. Most of what we know today about these people is based on evidence from stone tools modified by people and bits of bone. Spear points were among the first tools of the Paleo-Indians and can be found across North America.
The Preclassic era. The Olmec culture developed before 1200 BC and ended around 400 BC. The Olmec civilization represents something of a mystery. Indeed, we do not even know what they called themselves as Olmec was their Aztec name and meant "robber people". Due to a lack of archaeological evidence, their ethnic origins and the location of extent of many of their settlements are not known. The Olmecs did, however, codify and record their gods and religious practices using symbols. The art of the Olmec culture is one of the most important from the Pre-Columbian period. The most known works are the colossal stone heads. According to Cartwright, those were carved in basalt and have unique features. They may represent governors or rulers from the Olmec people. Some measure nearly 3 meters high and weigh 8 tons. The stands in where they worked, these pieces were taken from places far away, transported in balsas. The person represented used a helmet almost every time and could be portrayed with jaguar paws. One of the most important discoveries in the Olmec art is the Kung axe. It is described by the American Museum of Natural History as a figure that looks like a beast and a human, named like that in the honor of George Frederick Kunz, an expert in minerals and worker of Tiffany that was the owner of the figure. The mouth of the Kung's axe looks like a jaguar with eyes shaped like almonds. It is believed that the figure represents somebody who transformed himself into a jaguar. Some of the most important things that Olmec culture left is his legacy, because they were influential to other civilizations such as Maya or Aztecs. One of the most important technologies developed
So the
in
city
this
of
era.
Mirador is really revealing quite a bit about the Maya, even today. The pre-classic Maya might have been more developed than scholars previously thought, far bigger cities, far more powerful, and that makes us question the historical framework. And even now, only 1% of the city has been excavated. So it really shows us that history is probably going to continue changing for some time. And also the Popol Vuh. This city is showing us that it dates from at least 3 or 400 BC, so it predates any contact with the Spanish, despite the similarities that we see there between the two stories, these two creation stories, Genesis and the Popol Vuh. So another characteristic from the period that should quickly be noted are the Mayan roads, and these really linked the cities together. They were critical for that. Mirador would have been linked to many other cities, and it would have served as a hub for regional trade in the area. The roads were called white ways because they were covered with that white stucco that also covered their pyramids. Now we're going to switch to a look at the classic era Maya. And this was the real apogee of Mayan culture. The greatest achievements in terms of art, science, architecture, they were found here in the classic era. And a point that should be made to start is that instead of finding links to the Olmec during this period was defined by links to Teotihuacan. Mayan cities during the Classic era traded with Teotihuacan, and the fall of Teotihuacan in 750 is almost certainly linked to the fall of Classic era Mayan cities shortly after that. Now,
And now I'm going to talk about the Classic era. The period was the height of the Maya civilization, in which they perfected mathematics and astronomy, architecture, and the visual arts, and also refined and perfected the calendar. The oldest date recorded in this era is on Stele 29 in the city of Tikal. The city-states of the Mayan civilization stretched from east in the north all the way down to modern-day Honduras. Mayans also created a very important concrete mathematics